And welcome to Press Pass from Oregon Duck Football News. Warren Williamson with Gary Horowitz from the Salem Statesman Journal. I guess, Gary, the best place to start is just your initial cursory thoughts about the Ducks' performance on Saturday against Nicholls.
Well, they did pretty much exactly what I thought, although the first string players went a little longer than I anticipated. I thought Marcus Mariota at quarterback might be out midway through the second quarter. He played, I believe, until the end of the third quarter. And then it was good to see Jake Rodriguez and Jeff Lockie, the backup quarterbacks, play. They both led touchdown drives. A lot of players on both sides of the ball got in, which was good moving down the road. And nobody got hurt, which I think is probably, that's one of the most important things. 66-3. They did what they thought they would do. They sure did a lot better than Oregon State against an FCS opponent.
To me, at least to begin the game, they looked a bit out of sync, although they scored in 5 of their first 6 offensive drives. Let's talk about those backup quarterbacks. Let's start there. You and I talked last week about who would see first. Jeff Lockie came in and actually played pretty well. I think he is one that we would see if, for instance, something did happen to Marcus if he went down.
I think you're right based on the fact that we saw him first. He was the first quarterback out in the fourth quarter. But Jake threw a touchdown pass to Chance, I believe, wasn't it? Chance Allen, yeah. And I thought that was an excellent play. So I think it's pretty neck and neck. And if it ever becomes a time where they both have to see where something would happen to Marcus and one of them has to play, they're both going to get a good look. And early in the season, these are the kind of games where Coach Helfrich is going to find out who's more ready to play.
Let's talk a little bit about the running attack. That ground attack for the Ducks rushed for over 500 yards, 772 total. 3 players rushed for over 100 yards. Let's not get too excited again because it's an FCS school, Nicholls, but still 3 players rushing for over 100 yards was pretty efficient, pretty good.
Well, and one of them, of course, was D'Anthony Thomas, who had a career-high 18 carries. And you're right, the level of competition, Nicholls, I mean, what do we really know about the Ducks at this point? But what I liked about that was a lot of his carries were inside, between the tackles, and there's been a question, can he take the pounding? And I think he provided a little glimpse of what he can do inside the tackles. And he's strong. He's not going to push the pile like a Jonathan Stewart or a LeGarrette Blount. But he's gained a little weight. He's a little bit stronger, and he's still a threat inside. I like what Byron Marshall did. I think he's an underrated back. And we didn't see Thomas Tyner, although I believe there are indications which lead me and others to believe we're going to see him this week against Virginia.
We talked to Thomas a little bit after the workout today on Monday. He was made available to us. He said in his interview that he could have played on Saturday, which means he is healthy and he expects to play against Virginia. I think fans and coaches are waiting to see what this kid can do.
Everyone's waiting to see what he can do. Maybe he has some questions in his own mind. It's a lot different running in Aloha High School here in the state of Oregon. I'm not putting down football here, but it's a big jump. And going to Virginia, ACC school, I know they were 4-8 last year, but they beat BYU in their opener. So it'd be excellent to see him get a chance to play. He's bigger than any of the backs they have going right now, or at least he's bigger than Marshall, and he's bigger than D'Anthony Thomas. So I'm anxious to see what he can do. I know he's fast.
One of the key plays that everyone was talking about after Saturday's game was the Terrence Mitchell ejection, the hit, the intentional spearing. Do I think he intentionally tried to spear the kid? I don't believe he did. But the rule is if you go after an offensive player or any player above the neck to the helmet and there's helmet-to-helmet contact, you're going to get ejected, and we saw that over the weekend. Your thoughts on that rule and that hit this weekend?
I don't think that it was intentional. It was one of those bang-bang plays where the quarterback, he goes down, he's sliding at the same time that Terrence was in the air. So it's hard to avoid. It's going to be one of those gray areas, close call. It's put in to protect the players and hits above the shoulder. I think it's a good rule, but I don't know, enforcing it, I think it's going to be sort of a trial by air kind of thing. I wish he would have come out to talk to us about it. I mean, we haven't spoken to Terrence Mitchell yet. He didn't talk after the game. He didn't talk today. I don't really think we know it wasn't intentional, but it would have been nice to have him talk about it a little bit.
Coach Aliotti said on Saturday evening after the game that he was disappointed in the ejection. Of course, he's going to try to protect his player. I don't think he had the advantage of a replay at that point. but nevertheless, he was ejected for the entire rest of the game. Good thing it did happen in the first half because he sat out the second half, and he will be eligible to play Saturday against Virginia.
Right. Now, is the rule, and maybe you can clear this up for me, if he would have been ejected in the fourth quarter, would he have missed the first half of the next game? That's the way that works.
That's the way the rule works.
Okay, so that works to Oregon's advantage a little bit there. But I think if, and Coach Aliotti didn't speak today, he'll speak tomorrow, but I think after watching replay, I think based on the intent of the rule, I think the officials actually got it right. Although I agree with you and most others, it certainly did not look intentional.
And lastly, what I wrote about after Saturday's game was, what did we really learn? Were we able to really learn anything about this team because of the competition level, because Oregon scored 66 points and Nicholls only scored 3? Did you learn anything about this Oregon team?
Well, based on the fact that they have so many of the players back from a year ago that went 12-1 and finished number 2 in the nation, they certainly look like they're at least as good as last year, if not better, because they're a year older. Physically, they're stronger. I expect them to have an excellent season, but I'm anxious to see what they do at Virginia. They're going on the road, and they're great on the road. They haven't lost since 2009 at Stanford. 16 consecutive wins on the road. So I think in many circumstances they are a better road team even than they are at Autzen, where they've lost a few in the past couple of years. So I didn't learn anything new. It's pretty much what I already thought. This is going to be a very strong team, one of the contenders for a national championship.
The upgrade in competition is certainly going to be better. Virginia beat BYU in a very close game in Charlottesville at home. Virginia out of the ACC, they play tough schools like Florida State and Clemson. So I think it will be interesting to see how good this Virginia team is. Today, after in his post-practice briefing, Coach Helfrich did talk about the defense, that he expects the Virginia defense to be good. They're a stout defensive team. I haven't been able to see them play yet.
He really liked them up front, and I can't think of the names of some of these players, but he just was raving about the defensive line and the speed that they have. And that could be an intriguing matchup against Oregon's, their offense, the read option, which is all predicated on speed. Maybe, if they hold the running game a little bit, Oregon has to go to the air, which I think they would be fine because they've got Josh Huff, they've got Thomas, they've got so many receivers, Addison, and I think Mariota, even though he started a little shaky as far as his accuracy, I think he will be a better passer this season.
And lastly, last week you mentioned this about the kicking game. We did learn a little bit about the Oregon kicking game. Matt Wogan came in and had some pretty terrific boots in kicking off. Maldonado made a couple of field goals. I know you talked about this specifically last week in Press Pass.
Still a concern. I think Maldonado made one field goal, and they split the extra points. They didn't miss an extra point. And Wogan's kickoffs some of them were pretty deep. And I think he's going to handle the kickoffs. We don't know yet who's going to be the regular PAT and field goal guy. I think we're not going to know too much until there's a situation in a game where it really matters. I still think right now it's Maldonado with all of his experience, but he needs to prove himself in a big game. I guess he did make a couple in the Rose Bowl against Wisconsin, and it's a confidence thing. We'll see how he does it. By the way, this is my Terrell Pryor hat. It's not necessarily an Oakland Raiders hat, but he looks so good in that uniform.
Well, that's it for this week on Press Pass. I'm Warren Williamson with Gary Horowitz. You can follow Gary at the Statesman Journal and on Twitter at @GHorowitz. The Ducks go on the road this week to Virginia to play on the road for the first time this year. We'll be back next week with more Press Pass. For Gary Horowitz, I'm Warren Williamson. This is Oregon Duck Football News.